Once upon a time, in the rugged, misty lands of Scotland, there lived a valiant warrior named Macbeth, the Thane of Glamis. Now, Macbeth wasn't just any nobleman. No, sir. He was known throughout the land for his bravery and skill in battle, and the people loved him. One day, as Macbeth was returning home from a victorious battle, he and his friend Banquo were caught in a fierce storm. They sought shelter on the heath, when suddenly they heard the cackling of 3 witches. They were strange and eerie, with eyes that glowed like embers and hands that twitched like gnarled branches. "When shall we 3 meet again?" asked the first witch, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves, in thunder, lightning, or in rain. "When the hurly-burly's done," replied the second witch. "When the battle's lost and won," added the third. And then they vanished, leaving behind an unsettling silence that echoed the brooding presence of the storm. Soon, as if summoned by their eerie pronouncements, a herald arrived bearing a royal summons from King Duncan. It was a call for Macbeth to come to the capital. The king had learned of his valor in battle and wished to bestow upon him the highest honor, the title of Thane of Cawdor. Excited, Macbeth and his wife, the beautiful and cunning Lady Macbeth, set off for the capital. Upon their arrival, King Duncan welcomed Macbeth warmly, praising his bravery, and officially bestowed upon him the title of Thane of Cawdor. At the banquet that followed, the king announced that he would spend the night at Macbeth's castle in Inverness. This posed a dilemma for Macbeth, for the witch's prophecy now seemed tantalizingly close to fruition. He must become Thane of Cawdor, and he must become king. But Duncan stood between him and the throne. That night, as the king slept peacefully in his chamber, Macbeth grappled with a raging internal battle. On one side, his ambition and his wife's urging. On the other, his loyalty to the king and his own sense of honor. But ambition, like a relentless tide, slowly ebbed away his resolve until he finally succumbed. Lady Macbeth, her eyes gleaming with dark determination, helped him don a black nightgown and armed him with a dagger. Together, they moved silently toward Duncan's chamber. With a heart heavy with guilt and a hand shaking with fear, Macbeth plunged the dagger into the king's chest. The deed done, he stumbled back, his face ashen and his breath coming in gasps. Lady Macbeth, her face pale but resolute, took the daggers and smeared them with the blood of the sleeping guards, framing them for the heinous crime. As the news of the king's murder spread through the castle, Lady Macbeth calmly informed the servants that Macbeth would soon be crowned king. Then came the dreaded knock. It was Macduff, the Thane of Fife, whom King Duncan had summoned to name him Thane of Angus. Suspecting foul play, he had arrived early. Though suspicion clouded his eyes, he could find no evidence of treachery against Macbeth. Touched by the Thane's apparent grief, Macduff pledged his support and rushed to tell the nobles of the new king. Thus, under a sky as dark as their deeds, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth were crowned king and queen, but the weight of their crimes pressed heavily upon them, turning their triumph into a chilling mockery. Haunted by the specter of Banquo, Macbeth became increasingly paranoid. To secure his reign, he turned to a trio of murderers, ordering them to kill both Banquo and his son Fleance. The assassins carried out their task, slaying Banquo, but young Fleance managed to escape. At a banquet celebrating Macbeth's victory, the ghost of Banquo appeared, taking his place at the royal table. Macbeth, horrified and alone in his macabre vision, spoke to the apparition, but the ghost remained unmoved. Lady Macbeth, sensing the growing darkness that enveloped her husband, desperately tried to cover up his outburst, blaming it on a troubled mind, perhaps a touch unbalanced. Determined to uncover the truth about the witch's prophecy, Macbeth sought them out again, eager to learn how he might thwart Macduff's claim to the throne. The witches, their eyes gleaming with eerie wisdom, summoned apparitions to reveal their cryptic messages. One apparition held a bleeding crown, warning, "Beware, Macduff." Another displayed a child on a throne, proclaiming, "None of woman born shall harm Macbeth." Finally, an armed head emerged, announcing, "Macbeth shall never vanquished be until great Birnam Wood to Dunsinane Hill shall come against him." Emboldened by what he perceived as a guarantee of his invincibility, Macbeth grew even more tyrannical, sending murderers to slay Macduff's family. Only Macduff himself escaped, fleeing to England to join Malcolm, Duncan's eldest son. There, with the help of Macduff, Malcolm raised an army, gathering supporters who yearned for freedom from Macbeth's oppressive rule. Now, knowing that time was slipping away, Macbeth turned to the witches for one last desperate consultation. But instead of answers, he received a horrifying vision of his demise. Driven by this vision, Macbeth decided to strike preemptively, setting out with his army to annihilate Malcolm's forces before they could grow. Meanwhile, Lady Macbeth, consumed by guilt and despair, found solace only in sleepwalking. During these episodes, she would frantically try to wash imaginary blood from her hands, crying out, "Out, damned spot!" Her mental state deteriorated rapidly, and eventually she took her own life. As the armies clashed on the field of battle, Macbeth fought with the ferocity of a cornered beast, but the outcome was already decided. For the men of Birnam Wood, camouflaged by branches and leaves, advanced steadily on Dunsinane Hill, fulfilling the witch's prophecy. Inside the castle, Macbeth faced Macduff in a final bloody duel. Wounded and exhausted, Macbeth refused to yield. "I will not yield," he gasped, to dreaded bane of woman born. But Macduff, his face grim, revealed the truth. "From his mother's womb untimely ripped," he declared. With that, Macbeth realized the full extent of the witch's deceit and the futility of his resistance. Defeated and broken, he allowed Macduff to deliver the final blow. And so the tyrant's reign came to an end. King Malcolm was restored to the throne, and peace returned to Scotland. But the memory of Macbeth, the ambitious thane who dared to defy fate, lived on in legend, a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and the corrupting nature of absolute power. And that, dear listener, is the story of Macbeth. Do share your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you next time with another tale. Until then, stay safe and keep an eye out for those witches.